Ramona Abbott, and you're listening to Up Close and Personal Arts and Entertainment on KMRE 102.3 FM, broadcasting from the Spark Museum on Bay Street. Today I'm up close and personal with Cheryl Crooks, who is the Executive Director of the Cascadia International Women's Film Festival, playing this weekend at Pickford Film Center. Welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, Ramona. Glad to be here.
Excellent. First of all, tell me about what is Cascadia?
Cascadia is an exciting new festival that we're introducing this year to Bellingham. It's a festival that is dedicated exclusively to showcasing and celebrating women directors. All the films that we'll be presenting are made and directed by women directors, and we're only one of two in the United States that are dedicated specifically for that.
How did this get started?
The idea actually came about at least a couple of years ago. Started with a woman who was living here at the time, who had been chairman of the Female Eye Film Festival in Toronto, which has been running successfully now for almost 15 years. And it was her idea that Bellingham could also be a place for a film festival just like that. So we collaborated with the Female Eye in Toronto, and we did a weekend at the Pickford during its October in 2015. Brought in 8 films from Toronto and showed them at the Pickford. It was so well received that we decided, well, maybe we could do this. And we started looking into it. And then shortly thereafter, we began to put together the infrastructure, apply for nonprofit status, and everything that you need to do to put a film festival together, which we found out is enormous.
I was just going to say, I'm going to guess that is more work than that sentence just sounded like.
It has been. But it's also been a lot of fun. And it's also very gratifying. Just before I arrived here, I just heard from 2 more filmmakers that we're presenting this year. We're doing a total of 24 films, which is actually quite ambitious for a first year, but they're all excellent movies. And the 2 women that I just spoke with literally are so excited. We're presenting their films. They're trying to come. They're making the reservations to be here. We may have a total of 10 filmmakers coming this very first year for the festival. So I'm hearing from all over the world, women filmmakers, even those whose films weren't accepted into the festival, thanking us for what we're doing, because what we're doing is providing a platform and a place for women's visions and voices to be seen and heard on the big screen, something that is, doesn't exist in a lot of other places.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Why a women's film festival? Why is that necessary or useful?
Yeah, well, I wish it wasn't necessary. I mean, I think our goal ultimately is to not be in existence as a women's film festival.
Gotcha.
But the fact of the matter is, women are sorely underrepresented in the film industry. Women directors make up only 4% of those of the films that were directed. I think in the past 2 years, the feature films were only 4% were directed by women. And the largest number of women represented in the industry behind the camera is 14%, and that's film editors. So it's like there's a great need for that. It's not that women aren't capable or don't want to do this kind of work. It's just that the opportunities haven't existed for one reason or the other. Technology is changing that to some degree because it's much more accessible. You can pick up a camera or an iPhone for some cases and make a movie. But actually getting it seen out and presenting it to people and having an audience, that's another story. So we're trying to help fill that gap and also to bring about a change, and it's a start.
Oh, definitely. I was thinking about this last night as I was looking over some materials for today. And, I've been watching the Oscars much of my life, as many of us have. I've been a film fan for years. And for a long time, really, aside from the female talent starring in the movies, it was makeup, costume, and maybe editing.
Yeah, a script supervisor. You could be a script girl. That's another, long-standing occupation for women in the industry. But yeah, you're right, absolutely. And even so, even costume designers, there's still very few of them that were women that filled that role. More recently,
Right.
but it's still really terribly underrepresented. I mean,
So there's a body of work and you're curating it. It's,
this
you're
year, right.
accepting it. So talk about the process. Did you seek applications? Do you go out and seek what's out there? How does that work?
Well, it's kind of a combination of both. Initially, we were asking for submissions. But we became so overwhelmed, we realized quickly we didn't have the infrastructure in place. Within 4 days, we had 200 submissions of films.
Wow.
And that just goes to show you how much women, how many women out there are working in the field and how much they would like their films to be seen. So we had to kind of curtail that, and then we started to actively seek it. We still got submissions as people started to hear about us. They contacted us and said, would you look at my film? We had some distributors contact us and said, would you look at our films? We had a selection committee that was a very tough group. They looked at lots and lots of movies, hundreds of movies, to arrive at the 24 that we picked. And I will say they turned down some films that are showing at other festivals. This bar was set, especially for a first time out, very high. So what I have told the filmmakers that I've spoken with is that you are one of 24 represented in this program, and you are in very good company because this was a tough competition to get into.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of films that were didn't quite make the cut this year. Not that there weren't some other good films out there, but for one reason or another, there might have been something that they felt wasn't quite up to the level that they were seeking. So the movies that are going to be shown I'll put that program up against virtually any film festival that's out there, except maybe Sundance or Tribeca, one of the really, really big ones. But I've looked at a lot of film festivals as we've been doing this, and it's an outstanding program. I'm very proud of it.
Well, if you're fortunate enough to have that many applications, you're only taking one in roughly 10.
That's right.
So that means, you could be screened out for the tiniest of reasons.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
So when you're looking at this as well, so of course you're looking for quality.
Right.
Are you also trying, so you had slots for 24 films in terms of the time available?
We didn't have a set number.
Okay.
Actually, we had a set number of days that we thought we would program, and we kind of just kept going until we felt we had satisfied the number that we could, realistically present this first year. And we're only showing each film once, which is not typical of most festivals. Right. But we only are using one theater at a time. As we grow, that will change, of course. But this first time out, we wanted to keep it manageable and try to be successful. So
when you're looking at that range, mm-hmm. Are you also looking at trying to have different themes, different styles?
Oh yeah, definitely. We had certain things in mind. One of our goals, of course, was we wanted to provide, or one of our part of our goals of the Cascadia, is that we wanted to provide a local filmmaker showcase. If we could find a film that measured up to what we were looking for in everything else. Right. And that didn't mean just necessarily Bellingham. It could be regional, right. But we're calling it local filmmaker. And this is something that we want to ensure going forward that we will always have. And we were fortunate this first time out, we found 2 films made by people from Bellingham who they were very fine films. And we said, okay. So we programmed that in. Then we also decided it was important because of women actually have been directing films throughout the history of the industry. But a lot of those films people aren't familiar with. Right. So one of our goals is to show a film that I call a film of history, from history. And so we programmed one film. Actually, this year we have 2, but we programmed a film specifically to acquaint people with the director who perhaps they didn't know that is a woman that was prominent at one time or another in the film industry. And that one film happens to be the one that's our closing event over at the Mount Baker Theater, and it's a silent movie called The Dumb Girl Portici by Lois Weber. The film was recently restored. It hasn't been seen for like 100 years. It was made in 1916. It's a silent movie. Lois Weber made something like 300 movies during her career. And she was the highest paid director working in Hollywood throughout the silent film area well into the 20s.
Get out.
And yeah, no one knows about her much because she kind of disappeared once the studio system came in. So we have this movie, and it's a bit of a coup for us because it was shown, I believe, last fall, perhaps at Toronto, the big film festival there, and it's been shown in Los Angeles, New York, Houston, and I think that's it in the United States. So the fact that we have it showing here is kind of a big deal for us. So it's very, very exciting.
And Bellingham.
In Bellingham, of course, but where
New
else?
York. LA.
Yeah, what else? The other film I should say that we're also kind of showing that's a landmark film is one that was made 20 years ago, and it's a film called Watermelon Woman by Cheryl Dunne, and it's a LGBT film. She is a black woman filmmaker, and this film was a landmark in the queer film genre. And it's a wonderful movie. It's a wonderful story, and I met her actually in January at a film festival conference, and we talked a little bit about it. And part of the premises of the film is the main character does a documentary about a black actress that she has discovered from the 1930s that she knows nothing about. And it's so well done, she says, that in showing it to other audiences, she's had people come up to her and say, I remember that actress. She was so great. And Cheryl has to say, no, she never existed. There's no way you can remember her. So they're insistent that they know who she is. Anyway, so it's a great movie. It's a fun movie. So,
and as I'm hearing you say that, if there were ever a mark of a successful film, when you have people insisting that they remember the character from real life history that never existed, okay, that's an excellent presentation. It's
very funny. Yeah, I wish she was coming. We had hoped that she would be here, but being directors, they're busy, and she's off directing a television episode or something. So.
Right.
She's not going to make it, but I encourage anybody to come see the movie because it's good for that reason.
So how did you get involved? What's your background with film?
Well, I don't necessarily have a background per se with film. I guess my husband worked in the television industry. He was a screenwriter for many, many years, so I'm familiar with the industry. I was an arts editor for a few years as well, and I was formerly a journalist, and I'm a professional photographer, so I have the visual, orientation and all of that. But I was just telling someone this morning, as a journalist, I'm not afraid of picking up the phone and calling everybody and asking for outrageous requests from big producers that want to know who you are, But we're making ourselves known really quickly, and we have a lot of people involved on the board who have some strong film industry connections, which was very important to us at the outset because we wanted to instantly establish our credibility and visibility within the industry itself, so that people would know us and would submit our films and submit their films and take us seriously. So I kind of came through the back door, as that were, and it's worked out, oddly enough.
There are a surprising number of those folks here in Bellingham, aren't there?
There are a surprising number. People are coming out of the woodwork. Actually, we were aware of some of those people, but you'd be surprised how many people are here that we weren't aware of who are now stepping up and saying, hey, I'd like to help out. We have, for example, a panel discussion that's going to be on Sunday morning, April 23rd at the Mount Baker Theater, and it's what we call a script studio panel. We've had 4 short film scripts selected, written, 3 of them written locally, and we have a panel that is going to critique them after a live reading. And the woman who is going to moderate is a script supervisor who works all the time, is rarely here, but she happens to be here for that weekend, so she's going to step in and moderate. But those kinds of people exist. Mel Damsky's another good example. Mel is actually going to be on that panel, and Mel is an Oscar and Emmy nominated director, and he works all the time. He's between here, Toronto, Los Angeles, New York. So, and he's been involved with us from the very outset. I mean, the other thing, I should point out, Ramona, the thing that's interesting about this is it's not just women doing this.
Right.
We have a lot of men that are working with us on our board, on our advisory board, behind the scenes, because they realize too the importance of what we're doing, and they're just as much behind this as anybody.
Well, film, and like you, I've never been professionally involved in film. I do some video acting now and some local productions and such. But film is a reflection of our society, of our voices, of the stories that come from all of areas of the human condition. And ideally, would be presenting as many of those stories as possible.
Well, absolutely. If you look at the variety of the films that we're showing, and all the trailers are available on the website, so people can go there and see those. The stories are all over the board. Well, first of all, they're from all over the world. We have films from Italy, Russia. We have a Russian director that's actually coming for this event. I'm trying to think where so many places, France, Kosovo, and the United States, of course. But the stories they're all very different. We have documentaries, we have short films, we have some feature films. Thematically, there's no one thing that ties them all together, except that they are directed by women. They're charming, they're touching, they're powerful. We have a short film that's going to be presented on Saturday during the short film program, which I think is at 1:30 in the afternoon. And that film was made by a woman who now lives in France. She's Afghani. And her film is the most powerful film. I don't even know how she got this thing made, because she cannot go back to Afghanistan now as a result. It's very affecting. So I couldn't tell you which film is more powerful, more outstanding than the other, because they're all very different in character, but strong films.
And that makes me think of something else when you're talking about the LBGT and this woman's film. This is risky for a lot of people in a lot of places in the world. I think maybe here in the U.S., we tend to think of films as entertainment, which they are, and they're just big productions that happen, and the stories might be touching, and the stories might be about things that had danger and risk. For some of these women, you just said she can't ever go back home again because she did something that would put her at risk.
Yeah, that's true. But as a storyteller, I mean, as a journalist too, I mean, I experienced being a writer. Sometimes you have a story you just have to tell.
Right.
And sometimes you tell that at great risk to yourself, regardless of what the consequences could be. And I don't know if she thought about that when she was making this movie, but she obviously felt very strongly that this was a story that needed to be told. We have another woman who has short film. She's actually lives in Albania, and she takes up cultural themes. In her particular film that we're showing, the brothers are trying to find the sister a husband because they're dividing up the parents' estate. And in this particular culture, the woman cannot have any of the estate. And the woman in the film has different ideas about that. So she's tackling cultural issues that are specific to her area or things that she's familiar with. So the stories are the things that's important, From our standpoint, with the organization and our mission, we have three things we're trying to do. We want to entertain, enlighten, and educate. And I think a good storyteller or a filmmaker or a writer, whatever it is, that's what they're trying to do, regardless of what they're doing.
That is an excellent point, and I think one that perhaps we need to make over and over again is that even the greatest plays, the greatest films, the greatest stories written are told that are tragedies, that are compelling and perhaps have elements that are just heartbreaking. They all have humor as well.
Yeah.
Because you have to leaven tragedy with the relief of some laughter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're familiar with the play August in Osage County, for example.
Oh boy, yeah.
I mean, that's a fairly heavy play, right? But there's a very key moment there where everything is really comes to a standstill in a way, and they break it with humor.
Yes.
And that's people need humor, and especially different times of our lives and periods of what's going on in society. Humor is what sometimes gets you through things.
Yes.
But it also has a way of conveying information and making you think more deeply about things. I mean, humor is not easy to write. It's not easy to write. It's not easy to act. It's a difficult medium to work in.
Yes. And a lot of people involved with humor and tragedy and et cetera will tell you that in many ways tragedy is easier to act.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look at the actresses and actors that receive Academy Awards for, emoting in a big way. Whereas everybody who underplays or undercuts a scene, they're just kind of, oh, that's nice. But that takes so much more discipline. I studied acting for a while, so I know how that works. But it's kind of funny in that sense.
I came to acting a little later in life, always, of course, fascinated with it. And it is so true because you would read that the truly great actors, Spencer Tracy, some of them, they made it look so easy that it seems perfectly simple. Because I could do that. That's just being yourself on camera.
Right.
Au contraire.
Right, yeah, no, my acting, one of my acting teachers that I had, the best thing she ever said was, it's so easy, it's hard. And I thought,
that is perfect.
That's exactly right.
I remember making a small film with a friend of mine about my jewelry. And so she was filming a short snippet of me walking from the house to my studio. Now, walking is not hard.
Walking is not hard.
Walking every day, you do it without thinking. You walk from one place and you walk to the other. Put a camera on you.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, where do my hands go?
Right.
Where do my legs go? Do I usually smile? What am I doing? And you can become so self-conscious.
Exactly. I even know that from my professional work as a photographer because I'm a portrait photographer. And when people get in front of my camera, yes, I can just click the shutter release and I've got a picture of them, but I wanted to convey their personality. So to make that person comfortable in front of a camera or to make them forget that the camera is there so that you'll capture the essence of their personality. That's not so easy. And I think for me at least, that's where my journalism background really comes into play.
Right. Earlier you were mentioning some of these amazing people that we have in Bellingham. I've been doing a lot of these interviews, and I think that is something that maybe some people don't really realize about Bellingham. We have one of the most amazing demographic slices.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
Anywhere. People come from incredible walks of life.
Yeah. They want to live here, It's so beautiful, I think, as part of the reason. And then also, I think just the, I want to say, the aesthetic beauty of the place. But when you interact with people and you're talking, there's something about Bellingham that stimulates your, I don't know what it is exactly, but the people you encounter. It's truly amazing. I mean, the people that you say, what are you doing here?
Right.
I mean,
How on earth did you, it's become one of my favorite questions here. How did you end up here?
Yeah, it's an incredible place. And I think that's part of the draw of the city and the community. It's, makes us just an exceptional place to live. We're lucky.
Well, we're very lucky. And as we're talking, I'm realizing a good friend of mine whose nickname we'll just say is Yvonne to be alone. So that gives you a framework there. And she lives in Seattle. And she comments on this. She says, when I come to Bellingham, she said, I can be in the line at the grocery store and I find myself talking to the people in the line. And that is not something that I do.
Yeah, no,
anywhere.
No.
Ever.
No.
I don't do that. But in Bellingham, all of a sudden, I'm having these conversations with total strangers.
Yeah, and it's usually really good conversation, too.
Yes.
I mean, Bellingham is a very well-read city. I think at some time ago, I read somewhere that, per capita, more books are sold. There's more readers in Bellingham than practically anywhere else in the country, which sounds astounding. But when you think about the bookstores that we have and the people that live here, maybe not so astounding. It's a very well-read community, and a lot of people who aren't familiar with it are pretty surprised when they come here and when they're talking to people what they discover.
And the arts scene as a whole,
amazing.
Completely disproportionate to the size of our town.
It completely. I mean, one of the things when we moved here from Los Angeles, and one of the things that sold us on the community, well, there were a number of things, but one of the things early on, before we were thinking about moving to Bellingham, somebody gave us a tour of the Mountain Baker Theater, even before the renovations had finished. And we were astounded. We couldn't believe that there was a facility like this in a town this size. It was amazing.
Right. I think we are second only to Santa Fe in the number of artists, working artists per capita.
Yeah, working artists. That's true, I think.
Which again,
Also writers. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of writers that live here. But it's something about the I don't know if it's the climate or what, but it's very stimulating place to work. And I think also when you have other people like that around you, it stimulates creativity.
Well, I agree, and I'm thinking about this, and I know that independent film theaters do not necessarily thrive everywhere.
No, yeah, we're fortunate.
And the Pickford Film Center has...
The Pickford has a huge reputation, as I've been doing this festival and talking to distributors and things. And when I went to this conference in January, I found out, or I am finding out, just how substantial that reputation is. And it's got a good deal of respect.
And I think a very strong film program coming out of Western as well.
Yes. Western doesn't have one singular program, but they've got several different classes that are taught in film at Western. And the filmmaking community here itself is really strong. You know, they have a Facebook group here, Whatcom County Filmmakers, and I think there's something like 700 people on that Facebook group. So that just goes to show you that there's an incredible interest, in that medium.
Yes, and there's the Trailer Wars were for a while, and there's the name is escaping me right now, the horror... Yes,
Bellingham.
There we go.
And the Children's Film Festival that the Pickford does. I mean, it's really so. We're kind of coming into filling a one. We're lucky we found a vacancy, and it's one more thing that spot to fill. But I think we're going to be very successful, and we intend to be a destination festival to bring people from the outside up to Bellingham for a long weekend, to enjoy not only the films but everything else that we've got to offer here,
Well, if this is only being done in Toronto and Bellingham.
Yeah, and Portland. Portland does one, yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Portland.
But theirs is much smaller, actually. The number of films that they're showing, I was looking at it this year, and at least this year, we're showing a lot more films.
So that is just absolutely fabulous. Again, in a town this size.
Yeah.
When did you all start the process
of
this?
Oh, boy, we really didn't start. We started actually setting it up, the Cascadia itself, about a year and a half ago. But 2 years ago was when the kind of idea started to germinate. But most of the work on it has been done in the past 18 months, I'd say.
So from 2 years to go from basically zero to on par with some of the major film festivals in terms of quality, and to be one of only 3 women's festivals that we know of in the Western Hemisphere, at least.
Yes, right.
Maybe the world. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, well, we're proud of it, and I'm proud of the team of people who have worked long and hard on this, because there have been many people working on it, and without all those people, it doesn't happen. But they all very strongly feel that there's a need for this, and I think they're dedicated to the idea. I think that's one reason that they're all working so hard on it, because they realize that what we're doing is important. I like to tell people that you're joining a larger effort. This is not just a local thing. This is a global thing that we're doing. So.
Right here in the Ham.
Yeah, right here.
How can the hamsters help you? How can we support
They can come support the films by coming to the films, first of all, and seeing for yourself what it is we're talking about. Coming to the panels. The panels are top-notch. To be able to have that kind of information right at your disposal, right here, you take advantage of it. That's the kind of thing you'd be going to New York or Los Angeles to see, and I know this. I speak from personal experience. So take advantage of that. You can help support us financially, because it's not cheap to put on one of these things. There's a lot of expenses involved.
Get out.
And we can always use help with that. I mean, especially if you're a corporate business or something like that. So we're looking for partners. We've got some great partners this year have stepped up and said, we're willing to take a chance on you. And so that would be helpful. Also, we can use volunteers. If you'd like to help us out, there's all sorts of jobs that you can be involved in at different levels. So.
And what is the website, Cheryl?
The website is www.cascadiafilmfest.org. So you go there and you can find out all this information about the trailers and the panels
And everything.
Everything.
So you heard it here, folks. This weekend at Pickford Film Center, International Women's Film Festival, right here in the Ham. Go there. Be there or be square. This is Ramona Abbott, and this has been Arts and Entertainment at KMRE 102.3 FM.
In Bellingham. Your community, your voice, your station.